And joining me now, White House Press Secretary Jay Carney, whose boss is the President of the United States. Good morning to you, Mr. Carney.
Good morning to you, Gretchen. Thanks for having me.
So hot off the press right now from our White House correspondent Ed Henry, the legislation unveiled tonight by your boss will be asking for $400 billion in spending. It will be offset with cuts in spending, but the president will not reveal what those cuts are tonight. Instead, he's going to give another speech down the road. What can you tell us?
Well, look, first of all, Ed, who's a terrific reporter, I think that's, I'm not going to confirm that number. I think it's more of a guess than a dead-on price tag. What is important, and you forgot to note, is everything the president will propose tonight in the American Jobs Act will be paid for. The American people expect that, and they will demand it of Congress. They will also demand that Congress take action right now to help the economy and create jobs. And that's what the president's proposing. Every idea in this plan, in this piece of legislation that we will drop next week in Congress, is something that has had traditionally bipartisan support. And so we're hoping that after their 4 to 5 week recess, members of Congress will come back having heard from their constituents, the same thing that the president heard from Americans when he was in the Midwest a few weeks ago, that they're fed up with Washington in action. They want Democrats and Republicans to come together around sensible solutions to get the economy growing and creating jobs.
Well, one thing that might not have bipartisan support is an increase in taxes, which no doubt the president will ask for tonight, and an increase in spending, $400 billion. I mean, we all remember that the president actually laughed off the fact that shovel-ready projects didn't work the first time. Listen to this.
Shovel-ready was not as shovel-ready as we expected.
How will the president get around that tonight, Mr. Carney, to ask for $400 billion more when he just admitted a few months ago the first round didn't work?
Well, let's be clear, Gretchen. I know you're focused on the price tag here, which, again, I'm not confirming.
Well, it's big.
Secondly, everything will be paid for, and he will challenge Congress to get it done. All right? The American people are so not interested in the partisan bickering. What every American out there who can tell you that there are roads and bridges in their counties, in their cities, in their rural areas that need work. And there are construction workers in their communities who are out of work and need to be put back to work. And guess what? The infrastructure fund that this president supports has broad bipartisan support. It's supported by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, traditionally a very Republican group, and by Labor, traditionally more of a Democratic group.
Let me
so
ask you
why
this,
can't
Mr. Carney.
Congress come together around bipartisan ideas and get the job done now?
We'll see if Congress does rally around the president based on what he says tonight. But let me ask you this. Why go before the joint session of Congress if you're going to say stuff that the American public has already heard time and time again in 10 to 12 speeches before? Why say, I'm going to go on vacation for a month and then I'm going to come back and give this grandiose speech if it's going to be the same exact thing that they've already heard? So please tell me, what new thing is the American public going to hear today? What new thing will the American public hear tonight from your boss?
The American people will hear a lot of new ideas. I want to correct you. The folks who went on a month-long vacation weren't the president. It was the Congress. Secondly, the American people will hear a lot of new and innovative ideas that they haven't heard before. They will also hear very common sense, sensible ideas like a payroll tax cut for every working American.
We've already had that.
That has tradition.
That's not new.
And is that a bad thing?
No.
Oh,
well,
I'm sorry.
Did it create
is that a bad
jobs?
thing because it creates jobs?
Did it create jobs?
It grows,
when I look at the June job report and the July job report and the August job report, I see dismal numbers.
Gretchen, I'm not sure if you've talked to any economists, but there is not an economist whose PhD is worth the paper it's printed on who does not agree that when you cut the payroll tax, it has a direct impact on economic growth and job creation. If you're asking me if there were other headwinds that affected this economy, like the tsunami in Japan, like the Arab uprising that affected oil prices, and the situation in Europe, that's absolutely the case.
Yeah.
But
Mr.
cutting taxes,
with all due respect, we've heard all of those excuses before. What the American people want to hear tonight is something new, because this was going to be such an important speech. Well, can you give me just a little piece of what that new will be?
I'm not going to get ahead of my boss. I encourage you and your listeners to listen with an open mind to what the president says. Apparently, you've decided already that ideas that used to have broad bipartisan support shouldn't simply because they're proposed by this president.
I haven't decided
I don't think the American
anything.
People,
I was just hoping that we might hear something new. But let me ask you this. Speaking of bipartisanship, why did the president not want to take a meeting with the Speaker of the House, John Boehner, and Congressman Eric Cantor ahead of this speech? It looked as if, unless we don't have the full story and you can enlighten us, that they were trying to extend an olive branch to the president pre-speech. Why did he not take the meeting?
Well, first of all, we appreciated the letter that Speaker Boehner and Majority Leader Cantor sent that expressed willingness to cooperate on some of the very issues that the president's going to put forward tonight. We think that's a good thing. We think the American people demand it. This president has met with the leadership of the House and Senate more often for longer in the past several months than I think any president may have in history. The American people are glad they did that, but they certainly don't think that another meeting around a table is going to solve their solutions. They want solve the problems this country's facing. They want action. And look, the president's going to work with Congress, with members of both parties of both houses going forward to try to get this done and grow the economy and create jobs. I would simply note that nobody asked for, I'm sure when you had the speaker on, you didn't quiz him on why he didn't invite Democrats and the president in when they were crafting legislation for their jobs plan, when they were crafting the Ryan budget proposal. Those proposals went forward. They were or they will be judged by Congress. That's exactly what the president's going to do tonight. He will introduce legislation, the American Jobs Act, that again is made up of proposals that should have broad bipartisan support, will certainly have broad bipartisan support out in the country, and we hope Congress will act now because we've got to take action to grow the economy and create jobs.
I think that's one thing all Americans can agree on, that this speech will hopefully bring about action. The spokesperson for the president is Carney. Thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thanks, Gretchen.
Coming up next, we just can't get